Hello again, gamers. Welcome back for another episode of Grokking Battletech. I'm the board game captain, and today I'm going to be telling you how to grok the Rhino. Now, I want to start this off by thanking one of my viewers, Danny the Toastmaster, for requesting that I cover the Rhino combat vehicle in an episode of Grokking Battletech. So, Danny the Toastmaster, this episode is for you. The Rhino Fire Support Tank, or the Rhino Combat Vehicle, as it is generally referred to as, is a 80-ton combat vehicle dating all the way back to the Star League era. So, the basic version of this is usable in every era of the game, and there are quite a few variants, many of which were introduced either in the Star League or Succession War era, but there are even some variants that were introduced as late as the Jihad. There is not as many variants of this combat vehicle as there are of a lot of mechs I have covered on this series, so this might be a bit of a shorter video. And also, of course, because you cannot assign a mech warrior to a vehicle. But I am going to run through the different variants. I'm also going to run through a suggested lance of tanks or combat vehicles for use with my favorite version of the Rhino. I'm going to go over a custom version of the Rhino that was made by my own personal mech design firm, KIWF. All right, so without any further ado, let's get into it with the basic version of the Rhino. Now, the Rhino was designed to be a more all-around, well-armored and armed combat vehicle version of the Lrm Carrier. So the Lrm Carrier, if you're not familiar, is a heavy, I believe it is 60-ton tracked vehicle with very little armor, but 3 Lrm 20s on it on the base version, though there are some various different modifications on that throughout the different time periods. But generally speaking, what you can count on from an Lrm Carrier is lots of long-range missiles and terrible armor. It is, the basic idea of using combat vehicles to do something a mech can do in a cheaper, less maneuverable, sometimes less well protected format. You park them behind hills and rain indirect fire down upon your enemies. But if something fairly fast runs up on them, they've got really no armor to speak of. So they came up with the Rhino Fire Support Tank. Now, the Rhino still has quite a lot of LRMs. You've got 2 Lrm 20s on the turret, 1 Lrm 10 on the front. So slightly less firepower in regard to the LRMs that the Lrm Carrier has, but then a pair of medium lasers also in the turret. Now, this is a heavier tank. You up the tons to 80. And this allowed to have a much larger amount of armor on the Rhino than you have on the Lrm Carrier. So it's got a cruising speed of 3, a flanking speed of 5, and then the armor is 64 on the front, 54 on the sides, and even an amazing 40 armor on the rear. For a tank, this is a very sturdy 80-ton beast, a lot of armor for a missile tank. So the larger amount of armor does help to cover up a lot of the weaknesses that the Lrm Carrier has, with only a small reduction in the Lrm firepower, really. And the medium lasers can kind of help a little bit to deal with something fast and small that runs up on you. You can back up, turn the turret, fire at it with a pair of medium lasers. If it's not something ridiculously fast and ridiculously hard to hit, it's not bad. This really does fit the bill in covering up the issues that the Lrm Carrier had with this, this new Rhino. But as time periods go forward and you have a lot faster mechs and faster vehicles, the medium lasers don't necessarily always cut it, so there's a lot of variants. So let's go through some of the variants that we have. So the first variant I want to talk about is the Rhino Fire Support Tank Flamer version. Now this one, in the front, they get rid of the Lrm 10 and replace it with an SRM 6, as well as 2 vehicle flamers. It maintains the 2 Lrm 20s and the 2 medium lasers. So this loses even more of the long-range fire support that it was trying to emulate the Lrm Carrier with, but it replaces it with more close-range weapons. You've got vehicle flamers, you've got SRM 6s. These can be decent when dealing with other vehicles. Again, Not super great at dealing with things that are super fast because you've got still no pulse weapons here, but a lot better than the regular Rhino at dealing with moderately fast, fairly light armored enemies, especially because the flamers can be great also at dealing with infantry that try to sneak up on you, and also really good at dealing with vehicles too. So yeah, pretty good version, though I do dislike losing the LRM-10 on this one. Now, the next version we're going to talk about is the machine gun version. This is 3 machine guns in the front, as well as an SRM-6 in the front, and 2 medium lasers and the 2 LRM-20s in the turret. So this one, again, really great at dealing with infantry if you're playing combined arms, because once you start adding in tanks and VTOLs, and then you're going to want to have infantry, because then it becomes very interesting to make a big whole, multi-level combat. You don't just have mechs anymore at this point. Once you start doing tracked vehicles, you're going to want to add in hover tanks, and you're going to want to add in helicopters. So, but yeah, overall, it's okay. The machine guns aren't really that great against any major tougher targets. Even light mechs really can shrug off machine gun fire. But again, against infantry and stuff, pretty darn good. But I still kind of like the base version a little better than this because of the larger amount of missiles. Next, we have the ML version. Now, this one has the 2 LRM-20s still on the turret, the 2 medium lasers on the turret, and then in the front, it has an SRM-2 and 2 more medium lasers. I like this version a lot. The 4 medium lasers are actually quite deadly. Again, not great at dealing with super fast stuff from later eras, and this is a later era vehicle. This one is a Jihad era vehicle. All of these tanks, by the way, are all maintaining their 64 armor in the front, 54 on the side, 40 in the rear. That stays pretty standard throughout all the versions of the Rhino. But yeah, this one's not bad. I do like the large number of medium lasers. It can be quite useful. Now, the next one we have here is the SL version. Again, keeping the same movement, keeping the same armor. We have 2 medium lasers and 2 LRM-20s in the turret, just like all these previous versions have. And then the front version, as you might have guessed from SL, small lasers. We've got 4 small lasers and a SRM-6. Yeah, this one I'm not a big fan of. It's just, it's kind of a little bit lackluster. Now, next I want to talk about my favorite version. I saved it to last of all the major versions of the Rhino. I'm going to briefly touch on a custom variant and also a clan version variant that exist out there, some other things here. But this is the Royal version, the one that was for the Royal Regiments. This is my favorite version of the Rhino. Again, we have the same speed, 3, 5. We have the same armor, 64, 54, 40, 60 on the turret, which I think I forgot to mention earlier. They all have 60 on the turret. But this version of the Rhino, the Royal Regiment version of the Rhino, is a huge upgrade in weapon capabilities. So, first, we upgrade the LRM-10 and the 2 LRM-20s of the base version with Artemis 4 fire control. Next, we swap out the 2 medium lasers for a pair of medium pulse lasers. I love the inclusion of the medium pulse lasers in this. This is much better for intercepting fast enemy vehicles and mechs that are coming in to try to take out your Rhino. Definitely a good inclusion. A pair of Rhinos with 2 medium pulse lasers each, if you have a pair of these Royal Rhinos, are quite good at intercepting a fairly light mech, because each of those medium pulse lasers, when they hit, doing 6 damage apiece, a pair of Rhinos could rip apart a light, fast mech like a Locust really easy. Next, we have an anti-missile system and a Guardian ECM suite for some extra added protection, which is really nice, especially since that Guardian ECM suite can not just protect the Rhino, but also protect other missile boats that are hanging out near it, like maybe some Lrm carriers, etc. So yeah, this is really cool. This is definitely my favorite version of the Rhino. So now I want to talk about a couple other versions really quickly. I want to touch on, there is the Rhino Fstec. This is a clan version of the Rhino, really only used by Clan Coyote for some test beds for some clan technology. They threw some clan LRMs in there, which no longer have, the minimum range. So of course, it's better in that those LRMs can also be used against something that tries to come in on you at point blank range. But it's very rare to see clan players using lots of vehicles anyway. And even storyline wise, this one is not, not something they used as an actual weapon in combat. It was more of something used as a test bed. The other one I want to talk about is there was a experimental version named the Chewy, or the Rhino Hagar, that had 2 turrets, so it could split up the LRM-20s and the medium lasers. If you're using experimental weapons, it's kind of interesting. But generally speaking, these are kind of out there designs. So of all of the cannon designs, my favorite, hands down, is the Royal version. This is one that dates all the way back to the Star League, and with the reintroduction of all of the lost tech from the Helm Memory Core, this is one that anybody could use, and it is great. It comes in at 1,670 battle value. It is an 80-ton beast, and for a much more affordable price than a mech with a pair of LRM-20s, this thing could sit back and actually also has some better defensive capabilities if something tries to come in and hit it than a Lrm Carrier does. So yeah, very much love that version. So next I want to talk about my custom version. So this is a redesign of my favorite version, the Royal version, designed by my own personal mech design firm, named after the last initial of its 4 founding members, KIWF, but affectionately nicknamed Kill It With Fire by its fans. So they did the Rhino Royal KIWF. This is a minor redesign where basically I upgraded the weapons a little bit, as well as I had to remove the LRM-10 and reposition some things to fit everything on. So what I did was I put the 2 LRM-20s with the Artemis 4 fire control systems on the front of the tank. And then on the turret, I have 4 medium pulse lasers and 1 small laser. Because I was able to fit a small laser on, I figured why not? The idea with this is, as enemies come around that hill or building you're hiding behind to try to hit your pair of rhinos that are giving, good covering fire, doing that indirect fire, throwing missiles at the enemy, you back up, keeping your hull facing roughly the same direction so you can keep firing those missiles, and you turn the turret towards the enemy and unload on them with 4 medium pulse lasers and a small laser from each of the rhinos, which is plenty to deal with tiny little fast mechs or little fast vehicles like Savannah Masters that are trying to come in on you. You will tear them apart with 4 medium pulse lasers per rhino. Now you do have to, again, to fit those 4 medium pulse lasers in the small laser, you do have to lose the LRM-10 and all its ammo, but I think it's a fair trade. This is a lot of extra protection added on to the Rhino. Okay, so now, without any further ado, let's talk about my recommended lance. Now, the lance builds in the Clan Invasion book that comes in the Clan Invasion box, the lance builds allow you to give a lance ability to any lance as long as all of the units in that lance are of the same variety. So in this case, we're talking about vehicles. So I made a lance of vehicles, and I decided to go with the Firestar and go with the ideal role of the Firestar, which is missile boat. So now normally a Firestar has the requirements that at least 75% of the units in this formation must possess either missile boat or sniper roles. But if you just have all missile boats, it's fine. That actually meets the requirements anyway. But having the ideal role of missile boat, it gets the ability regardless, because I'm using 4 missile boat vehicles for my lance. Now, the bonus ability is at the beginning of each turn, up to 2 Firestar units may receive the sniper ability, which the sniper ability halves the range modifiers, the extra difficulty of range modifiers. So instead of a +2 at medium and a +4 at long, you have a +1 at medium and a +2 at long. This is going to be really great for those LRMs. This lance will be a Clan Invasion era lance, and it will be coming in at less than 5,000 battle value. The idea with this lance is to make a Clan Invasion lance to give indirect fire support to a lance of mechs, usually, especially when fighting against the clans. Because if you're playing against a clan player and they're going to play out an entire star of mechs, you're probably playing 10 to 12,000 battle value so they could fit 5 mechs in, because clan mechs are so much more expensive. So the idea here is you have 4 mechs with a total battle value of 4,936, significantly less than 5,000, and then the extra points that you didn't spend can go towards your lance of mechs, and you can have a really beefed up close range group of mechs, which is one thing that the Inner Sphere does better than clans, is close range firepower. So you can go running in there with some big mechs with a lot of like LBX autocannon 20s, ultra autocannon 20s, Gauss rifles, heavy Gauss rifles, all depending on what time period you're playing. Of course, you're not going to have the heavy Gauss in the clan invasion. But if you're playing this at an even later time period, maybe you could start using heavy Gauss or even heavy PPCs. But for the 4 vehicles that are going to give them some indirect fire support, first we have a pair of the Rhino Royals, 2 of them. So again, this is my favorite version. This is the one where it's got an LRM 10 and 2 LRM 20s, both with Artemis 4s, 2 medium pulse lasers, and it's got an anti-missile system and a Guardian ECM suite. So we've got 2 of these protecting a pair of LRM carriers. Now this is the Lrm Carrier 3055 upgraded version, which comes with 3 LRM 20s with Artemis 4s. Now these things need protection because their armor is terrible. They only have 14 on the front and sides, 11 on the rear, no turret. And these things, but they're only 798 battle value each, which again means that with the pair of the Rhinos at 1670 each and the pair of the LRM Carriers at 798 each, this comes in at only 4,936 battle value. So again, if you're playing 12,000 battle value, you have well over 1,000 battle value that you can add on to make your Lance of Mechs even beefier. And then what you're going to want to do is you're going to park these guys 2 by 2 behind a hill. You're going to like basically have the LRM Carriers right up against the hill, and you're going to have the Rhinos a little further back, so that when you see if your enemy has an interceptor mech or a scout mech or some scout vehicles coming around the flank trying to get at your LRM Carriers, you're going to reposition your Rhinos over there to intercept them, hit them with those pulse lasers, and hopefully take them out before they get to your very vulnerable LRM Carriers, while your Lance of big gun mechs with all those autocannon 20s and Gauss rifles are going to run up point blank to the enemy and just try to rip them apart. Now, if you're using a big hill or a building to hide your missile vehicles behind, you can make the Lance go towards one side so that if something goes the other way and outspeeds your mechs, as clan mechs tend to do, and it tries to get around you, you can have your Rhinos repositioned to that side of the hill and intercept them before they're able to get around the hill to get at your LRM Carrier. So that is my idea for the Rhino. What did you guys think of doing a Grokking Battletech episode on a vehicle? Would you like to see me cover more vehicles? Please let me know in the comments down below. Feel free to request any vehicles that were introduced in the Star League, Clan Invasion, Succession War, Civil War time periods. I'm trying to stick to stuff from that time period for a while before I move on to the later time periods. But feel free to request any vehicles if you'd like me to cover more vehicles in these shorter episodes like this one. And if you enjoyed this episode of Grokking Battletech and you'd like to see me do more like it, be sure to give this video a like, share it on all forms of social media. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Board Game Captain. That's Captain spelled a K on YouTube. And until next time, game on.